Gemini Man is co-written by half of the famous/infamous duo behind Game of Thrones, David Benioff, is directed by Ang Lee, visionary director Ang Lee, I might say, and stars Will Smith. Gemini Man follows a hitman who is being targeted by his own government, who end up sending a younger clone of himself to actually do the deed. This was a movie that took me a while to really get into the idea of looking forward to seeing it, and it was mainly because of that initial teaser trailer. Two things about it really put me off a bit. There was a specific scene focused on younger Will Smith, and the visuals on his face looked like maybe they hadn't been fully touched up yet, and I wasn't going to hold that against the film, so, until I saw it in theaters, so I didn't keep that on my mind. But of course, it did bother my eyes being somebody who gets the most out of a movie's visual effects compared to every other aspect. And the second thing was a choice made for that same trailer, a choice that I've noticed in initial trailers for big budget action-oriented films, and it's with this kind of synthesized song that is supposed to be kind of serious and dramatic and have like a drastic feel to it. I first noticed it with the teaser trailer for Edge of Tomorrow. This is not the end. And that's actually what kept me from seeing Edge of Tomorrow in the first place. And it actually took me a couple of years after the fact to actually go back, watch it, and then I realized this is a fantastic movie. Edge of Tomorrow is actually one of my favorite modern action films, or like action sci-fi, but still. And now, I don't recall off the top of my head any other films that came in after Edge of Tomorrow that played with this marketing tool. Until this year, I started noticing it with two specific films. The first one was Terminator Dark Fate.
If travel is searching and home has been found, I'm not stopping, I'm going hunting.
And with Gemini Man, which you'll see when I do my transition later. And like I said, I'm not a fan of this synthesized song idea for movie teasers or trailers, but I'm not going to let that keep me from watching a movie. I actually at least learned something from my lesson, I learned a lesson, I should say, from the whole debacle with Edge of Tomorrow. But some things that made me at least more interested in Gemini Man were the visuals on Will Smith in later trailers, and also the reports that the film would be shown in 120 frames per second. The last time I saw any film with a higher frame rate in a movie theater, was with the Hobbit films, and we all know how that turned out. That wasn't exactly the best idea ever to do that. But of course, the first film came out, let me think, 2011? 2012, so 7 years ago, basically. It came out 7 years ago, and film technology has come very far ever since then. So my main thought is that maybe the concept has been improved on, or perhaps cinema technology has been improved enough to where, it works better. I was gonna say it looks better, but more like, yeah, it works better than it did back then. But of course, most theaters can't show film at that speed, but hey, maybe I'll see it and still think that the higher frame rate works, because I'm going to our IMAX theater at our AMC tonight, and I'm pretty sure that they'll have it at least 60 frames per second. Now, before I get on to my thoughts on the film, I'm going to throw out my normal disclaimer for the uninitiated. And before I actually do that, I forgot to mention one thing earlier. I haven't seen the movie yet. I will be seeing it in just a couple hours, and I just wanted to throw this part out, just to do it. But anyway, my normal disclaimer for the uninitiated. The way that I convey my thoughts on a film is I do a pro and con list. It really helps me to best convey my thoughts on a film, good or bad. And while I try to keep the sections separate, if if I can make a pro and con work off of each other, or if they're intrinsically tied together where I basically need to use them to basically prove a point on what I think about the film, I always take advantage of that. Anyway, oh, sorry. Oh, I had a little burp that was like trying to go up my throat and it got stuck for a little bit. Anyway, sorry. There's your disclaimer, and I'll see you guys again when I get back from seeing Gemini Man.
I think I know why he's as good as you. He is you.
25 years ago, they made you from me. They chose me because there's never been anybody like me. We have to end this right now. Of all the people in the world to come after me, why would he send you?
Okay, I'm going to start with the frames per second. So, this was in 120 frames per second. As I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure that I only saw it in 60 because my theater is not one of the ones that can support 120. Apparently, as far as AMCs go, there's only like 14 in the country that can do it, and there are none in my state, so that was definitely not going to happen. But as a framework for those unfamiliar with how it works, your standard TV show, movie, even your standard YouTube videos are usually set at 24 frames per second, and the Hobbit films were set at 48 frames per second. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that I got 60 frames per second. Now, I will say that Gemini Man does not have the same issue that the Hobbit films did. It did not look like you were watching a soap opera. Thank God. But actually, no, in some scenes, it actually wasn't too bad. For the first few minutes of the film, I was sitting there thinking, okay, I can do this. Sure, things further in the background look a little odd with how they're moving, but I actually think I can get used to this. This isn't too bad. And then, once the first action sequence happened, everything just goes to shit. The frame rate makes it difficult to see what's going on, especially in close quarters, and everything begins to have this sort of weird movement to them, regardless of if they're CGI or not. Everything looks like, it's like when you put an older movie with really early CGI on a 4K UHD TV with a higher frame rate and motion smoothing. You just can't help but notice that the CGI object or objects basically look like they were rendered in a PS2 era video game. You know, they look more like that than something tangible in a live action film, and sadly it takes away from any good thing about this movie. For instance, the action sequences are actually not that bad. They're good. They're pretty good. I like them mostly because of how they're staged and how they're choreographed. The choreography, especially in the close quarters fight sequences, are actually pretty fun. But it doesn't matter because the frame rate takes away from that. Even the visuals suffer under the weight of the higher frame rate. Now, I will say this. In some scenes where younger Will Smith is by himself, not necessarily by himself as a character, but I mean, he's the only Will Smith in the picture, literally, figuratively, whatever, visually, physically, whatever, Lee, but God, I hate how my mind gets jumbled up on these things. But no, if he's by himself, older Will Smith is nowhere near in the camera frame, and it's a still frame not in the sense that it's a picture, but more like the camera is steady, it's more like it's on a dolly and not handheld, then the de-aging is actually phenomenal. But anytime there's an action sequence or the camera is way too far away from him, it looks atrocious. Hell, there's a scene at the very end of the movie where, you know, it was the worst that it ever was. Very obvious that young Will Smith is at least half of a CGI creation. Like, it was like that scene wasn't touched up as much compared to the rest of the film. And I'm not sure... Actually, no, I am sure that without the high frame rate, most of the scenes would have looked amazing, and that final scene would have at least looked better. And I'm just gonna say it, this is a terrible script. And I should have actually expected this because, and I actually forgot to mention this in my intro, but this film has been in development hell, if anything, since 1997, has bounced between a couple of different studios, including Disney at one point, and has had many, many stars attached to them, and I can actually list all of them off. You had Harrison Ford, Chris O'Donnell, Mel Gibson, Jon Voight, Nicolas Cage, Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Clint Eastwood, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and even Sean Connery was attached to this at some point. All of these people had been attached to the main role and to this project at one point in time, but it could never be done because, of course, the technology was never up to par until now. We've had so many films, especially under Disney, that have utilized de-aging technology, and the script has probably changed so many times since then. Who knows how much of the original concept has actually survived? It doesn't really matter because this film boasts so many writing credits, which is rarely a good sign anyway, and one of those names is, as I mentioned before, David Benioff. Now, I'm pretty sure that I've mentioned this on my channel before, but it doesn't matter, I'll still say it anyway. I detested the final season of Game of Thrones. I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, probably loved one of them. I'm pretty sure that I may have loved both of them, but that's beside the point. I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, and then I hated every single one of them. But I'm not one of those people who goes online and starts screaming like, oh, we need to boycott things, or we sign this petition and we can, and if enough people sign this petition, then HBO will obviously go back and rewrite everything. I'm not one of those people, but I don't know. Even with my hatred of that final season as a whole, I still did my best not to hold it against Benioff to the point where I would think that this film was bad simply because, you know, he was a co-screenwriter of it. And of course, I don't know how much of the script is his doing, really. But back to the writing itself, this is an extremely predictable plot laden with uninteresting and expositional dialogue. You know, the kind that I hate, the kind that talks down to the audience. It's especially noticeable in those scenes shown in the trailer, where, these scenes.
You made a person out of another person. Then you sent me to kill him.
I think I know why he's as good as you. He is you.
He is you. He is you. He is you. He is you.
And for predictability, the trailers pretty much give away nearly everything that happens in the film and that the film's about, and doesn't go much deeper. Hell, the film has no depth in the slightest. The only thing that's really kept out of the marketing is this little tiny plot twist that happens near the end, but as you're watching the film and you're listening to them basically explain things, you can see the twist coming like 30 minutes before it even happens. And as far as the performances go, everyone is mostly fine with Will Smith giving the best performance in the film, playing both the younger and older versions of his character. Nothing, in the long run, nothing really amazing, not his best performance or performances, but I will say that he is actually really good at playing the younger version specifically. I was actually kind of surprised by that. And yet, not at the same time. This was probably the worst big-budget movie of 2019. It feels like a movie that was in development hell for years, to the point where hardly anything feels like it goes together or works together. I do not recommend this film at all. The script is truly terrible, and I hope that those who were able to see it in a simple 24 frames enjoyed it more, because like I said, I did 160. If 160 is bad, I feel bad for the fuckers who were able to watch it in 120 frames per second, because that high frame rate just ends up hurting a lot of the good parts. our cinema and film technology is getting better and will always improve, and it's obvious that 60 frames and 120 frames per second works better now than it would have around the time of the Hobbit films like 7 years ago. But humanity is still not ready. Maybe just give it another 5 years or so and we'll see. Hell, and I will say this, if Ang Lee wasn't able to do it, there's only one person that I believe that can actually make this work.
His name is James Cameron, the bravest pioneer. No budget too steep, no sea too deep. Who's that? It's him, James Cameron. James Cameron, explorer of the sea, with a dying thirst to be the first. Could it be? Yeah, it's him, James Cameron.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for watching this video. In a few seconds, we'll have some buttons and stuff pop up. Click on my channel icon to subscribe to the channel and continue your much appreciated support. And you can also check out a couple of other videos on the channel as well, namely the most recently uploaded, which will be on the left side, and then the other one will be a video that's picked at random by a YouTube algorithm. That'll be over on the right. So anyway, farewell until the next video, all of you casual moviegoers and movie fans alike, and keep on being awesome.